My name is Sabrina Orah Mark, and I am a poet, fiction writer, and creative nonfiction writer. My creative capital project is called Happily, Essays on Fairy Tales and Motherhood, which began as a monthly column in the Paris Review. These essays rose out of my panic and love and terror and hope as I tried to make sense of what it meant to be a mother raising two Black Jewish boys in the South. Each essay uses another fairy tale as a piece of driftwood. As I explore questions of racism, anti-Semitism, inheritance, loneliness, weather, love, failure, marriage, I hold on to the fairy tale so I do not drown, so I can get to shore. I will read an excerpt from an essay called Ghost People. My son's first grade teacher pulls me aside to tell me she's concerned about Noah and the ghost people. Ghost people? Yes, she says. She is cheerful, though I suspect the main ingredient of her cheer is dread, something she probably picked up from childhood. Can you encourage Noah to stop bringing them to school? She is whispering and she is smiling. She is a close talker and occasionally calls me girl, which embarrasses me. I don't know these ghost people. You do? I don't think so. He makes them out of the wood chips he finds on the playground. They're distracting him. He isn't finishing his sentences. Okay, I say. Ghost people, I say. She smiles wide. One of her front teeth looks more alive than it should be. As a toddler, Noah always had a superhero in one hand and a superhero in the other. Like the world was a tightrope and the men were his balance beam. Now he makes his own men out of pipe cleaners and twigs and paper and Q-tips and string and Band-Aids, but mostly wood chips. I eavesdrop. With Noah there, the ghost people seem to speak a mix of cloud and wind. They are rowdy and kind. They comfort him. If Adam looked like anything in the beginning, I suspect it would be these wood chips, the color of dry earth. He too would be speaking in a language from a place that doesn't quite exist. But now Noah is in the second grade, and as he gets older, I am certain the world will make it even more difficult for him to carry these people around. For God's sake, says my mother, let him carry the freaking ghost people around. Who is he hurting? Maybe himself, I say. Why himself? She asks. How himself? They're distracting him. From what? Asks my mother. From his sentences, I explain. Who the hell cares, says my mother. In Carlo Collodi's Pinocchio, the first thing Pinocchio does once his mouth is carved is laugh at Geppetto, and the first thing he does once his hands are finished is snatch Geppetto's yellow wig off his head, and the first thing he does once his feet are done is kick Geppetto in the nose, leaving him to feel more wretched and miserable than he felt in all his life. If what he is making hurts him, why does Geppetto keep carving? Maybe it's because before he even began carving, he knew he would call his wooden son Pinocchio. Maybe because Geppetto understands that sometimes the things we create to protect us, to give us good fortune, need first to thin us into a vulnerability where the only thing that can save us are those things that almost erased us, where the only thing that could bring us back to ourselves is what brought us to the edge of our being in the first place. Or maybe it's just that Geppetto is lonely. What did you do today at school? Nothing, says Noah. When I empty his lunch bag, I find 3 ghost people inside. Eli, my 5-year-old, doesn't make ghost people, but his pockets are always filled with sticks and leaves. If I were to keep everything my boys have ever found and brought home, I could easily have enough for a whole tree. maybe even a small forest. When the shooting happened at the Tree of Life, all I could think about at first was the name of the synagogue. All I could think about was the tree. I shut the news off fast. What happened to the Tree of Life? Asks Noah. Nothing, I say. I think a branch fell, I say. I haven't yet read my boys' Pinocchio, the story of a boy carved from a tree, and I don't tell them about the shooting at Tree of Life either. I get an email from our synagogue. Join us for coffee and an informal discussion about how we can help our children cope with frightening situations as well as anti-Semitism. I go to the meeting. I say, I've told my boys nothing. Some congregants say I'm keeping my sons in a bubble. One maps out the active shooter plan she's drawn up with the help of her 5 and 8-year-olds. Another congregant, feeling protective of me, interrupts with the word cocoon. Cocoon is more like it, she explains. What she means, I think, is that bubble implies a lack of air, whereas cocoon implies transformation. Her boys might not be ready, says another congregant. Who is ready, I wonder? At 43, I'm not ready to know we can burst into smithereens at any moment, ready to be hated since forever. An Israeli congregant explains he keeps nothing from his children. He uses the word inoculation. Like if you inject little pieces of horror into your children, they won't shatter when the horror comes. I get his point. I shove a piece of cake into my mouth. I shove a piece of cake into my mouth because I can't shove the entire room into my mouth, because I can't shove all the windows and chairs and all the parents and all their fears and all their children too. I don't know how to save anybody. When I pick Noah up from Sunday school later that morning, an enormous paper chamsa dangles around his neck by a soft strand of red yarn. The chamsa is brightly colored and beautiful and heartbreaking. It's for protection, says Noah. I watch the other Jewish children spill from the classroom wearing paper hands on their chests too. It's the paper hand of God, says Noah. He swings his yarn around so now the chamsa is against his back. He is so small suddenly. He is wearing rain boots. But I don't remember it raining that day. My child, I want to say at the meeting at the synagogue, carries ghost people around, so we'll be fine. I want to say I haven't even read my son's Pinocchio yet. I want to say how many minutes of all our children's childhoods are left. Instead, I say, my children ask me if their Black father was ever a slave. They ask me if they will ever be turned into slaves. They ask me if I will ever be turned into a slave for being their mother. As Black Jewish boys, my children will never be in a bubble. But if there is a bubble big enough, I'd move there in a second. Everyone gets very quiet. Tell me where the bubble is. Where's the bubble? I opt out of the next meeting, an improv workshop on dealing with Christmas, violence, anti-Semitism, shootings, the armed guard now at our synagogue, and more. Thank you.